leaked phone calls have revealed just what the Russian public thinks about Ukraine's plans to liberate parts of their country. All right, I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's get right into it. Okay, first, this is from Insight from Ukraine and Russia, who always has some of the wildest intercepts of anybody. And again, this is purportedly a Russian father complaining about Ukraine's plans to retake Crimea. Now, as you guys know, Insight is a great Ukraine content creator, actually, and I only check out like maybe 10% of his videos. You should absolutely check out his channel. The link is in the description. And you should subscribe and even become a channel member, since all of that really helps him out. He obviously is like me and like a lot of Ukraine content creators, subject to a lot of demonetization from YouTube.
An intercepted phone call with Russian father talking to his son soldier. So let's listen to it.
Алло. Ага, что, связь там сорвалась? Как у тебя здоровье, как дела, нормально все?
When he's like, did the connection drop? Old school phone wiretaps, you used to actually hear the like other person on the call. It used to actually not be, they say you could even tell if you were being tapped, because you would actually hear a click of the third party hanging up their phone. Now, when he says, did the connection drop, I wonder if that's actually Ukrainian intelligence, maybe like rerouting the call signal to a compromised cell phone tower, or it could be or they could simply have a compromised tower. And sometimes when connections drop and then get rerouted, maybe it reroutes through and they start to pick the call up. So it could be, targeted, or it could be more like fishing, where you drop a line and let the fish swim to you. As guys, sometimes we focus so much on taking care of everyone around us that we forget to take care of ourselves. But if you need permission to get yourself something nice this month, well, this is me giving it to you. In fact, you should get something nice for yourself every month. And if you don't know what to get, well, today's sponsor, Bespoke Post, has you covered. Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club delivering a box of awesome, top-shelf goods from under-the-radar brands. It's free to join, and you can skip a month or cancel at any time. 90% of the products come from small brands, many of which are based right here in the U.S. For example, the Trail Box contains a gut hook knife, which is made by Titan International in Illinois. Every month, Bespoke Post introduces its members to cool new products: outdoor gear, barware, home goods, kitchen goods, clothing, and more. And it's based on a preference quiz that you fill out. Every box of awesome has around $70 worth of goods inside, but costs you only a fraction of the value. You can preview your box before it's even shipped. You'll get a box of awesome assigned to you, and you can preview its contents before it goes out. So you can decide if you want to keep it, swap it out for another box, or skip the month entirely for no charge. You only pay for what you want. I ordered the Trail, which included a field box, pocket saw, paracord bracelet, survival guide, and, coolest of all, a gut hook knife from Titan International. Look at how sick the handle looks. That's real wood. I also got the Last Call, which can turn anyone into a mixologist. With falernum syrup, cucumber habanero simple syrup, Moscow mule syrup, cranberry lemon syrup, New Orleans style old-fashioned rouge, and jalapeno margarita mix, it can turn even my basic liquor cabinet into a craft cocktail extravaganza. To get 20% off your first box of awesome, click the link in the description and enter code COMBAT20 at checkout, or go to bespokepost.com/combat20 and get your box of awesome today.
Че, все ровно стабильно? Да? Тяжеловато. Че, нажимают? Очнулись, что ли? Выбейте вы их, нет оттуда. У вас-то что, все в наличии, нормально?
Interesting. So he's asking, is it tough? Are they putting pressure on you? Did they wake up or something? It sounds like they might be his command. And then the father asks, will you get them out of there, won't you? I think that maybe his son is a commander or some sort of junior commander who's trying to look out for his soldiers. He says, so what about you? Everything in stock, okay? That may be a reference to supplies. Oh, but now he asks, is Sasha with you? So I bet it's more like Sergei from the village who's out serving in a unit with some of his friends.
Тяжело с этим, с личным составом мало. Личным составом, говорю, надо добавить вас, да. Там не слышно, призывать не будут, еще набирать.
So actually, the father asks have you heard if they'll be calling up more soldiers? And believe it or not, there are actually considerable rumors that this is exactly what's going to happen. Just today, the Institute for the Study of War alleged in a report that inside sources are saying the Kremlin's inner circle might be conducting a second wave of mobilization. This is ahead of the fall conscription cycle, which starts October 1st, and that Russian Telegram is saying, and other sources have sort of alluded to this, that there's a significant change happening in this month, September, and that a second wave of mobilization might occur. Now, remember, guys, Russia has used a lot of tricks to try to get soldiers in uniform to fight, but they are not willing to enact a draft. An actual conscripts are trained and sent to the fighting. That, it was believed, put such a burden on the Russian public during the Afghan conflict that it actually contributed to the fall of the Soviet Union. So in an effort to sort of circumvent this, they're using these reserve mobilizations. These are soldiers who've completed their annual conscription and on some level agree to serve in the reserves. But that's going to that potentially could bring in up to 300,000 reservists into the Russian armed forces to fight in Ukraine. They also, ISW describes crypto mobilizations. These are off the books or gray area mobilizations that try to coerce reservists into the force at low numbers over a long period of time, usually by coercing them to sign voluntary contracts to go to Ukraine. Of course, the channel claims that Russia's targeting between 170 and 175,000 reservists and moving the conscription date from October 1st to November 1st in order to get these newly mobilized reservees through the training pipeline before there's a huge influx of conscripts. There's also, of course, what they're calling a contract mobilization, trying to offer ever more lucrative contracts to get thousands or hundreds of thousands of personnel to sign up for contract service, often using coercive measures. Right. They are also trying to restrict certain individuals from getting mobilization deferrals, but this has been a source of considerable contention in the Russian administration. So the father may be onto something when he talks about, have you heard if they'll be calling out more soldiers? And this has been a theme of just about every Russian phone call we've heard, has been that their units are dangerously understaffed.
Там слышу, опять они что-то готовят эти.
Right. By the time these sort of rumors make it to the English language media, I'm sure they're pretty pervasive in the Russian media. And remember, because Russian state media is so tightly controlled, especially now that all the mill bloggers have been arrested, the Russian public is very good about using rumor mills to get the actual relevant information. Because just like you and I, right, we care if interest rates are going to rise when we get a new car or a mortgage. We care if our student loans are going to be forgiven or if we should pay them off, right? Knowing what the government is going to do and how their policies are going to be rolled out impacts every citizen's daily lives. And the Russians are no different, right? In fact, because their government is so totalitarian, they can oftentimes, it demands even more knowledge of how the government's operating. And so Russians probably rely on informal networks because they can't rely on the press. So a text message thread, knowing a guy whose cousin works in the Kremlin, right? All of those sort of rumor mill, informal information networks are the lifeblood of Russians, but I think a lot of societies where there isn't a robust free press.
Ну, это три дивизии, 100 тысяч хотят еще сейчас скинуть.
Yeah, sounds like the numbers are just about right.
Народу. У них формируется сейчас, едут с обучения, все вот эти танки, все, что заготовили, кинут сейчас. Хотят Крым отбить, да это, пройти.
Oh, no, he's talking about the Ukrainians. They want to send 100,000 more people, 3 divisions. Yeah, that's about right numerically. So it says they're forming up now, training on all these tanks, everything they prepared, and deploy them to reclaim Crimea. Guys, I haven't heard anything like this. And you know, I'm here to tell you guys honest truth, right? I'm going to try to give you the best analysis with the information that's available to the public, which is not always spot on. But I want to point out the initial goals of this counteroffensive were to blast through Zaporizhzhia and to roll through this region here, right? It's geographically the book answer, so to speak, of where is the best spot for an offensive. I think Ukraine may have actually made I don't think this was the right location based on the fact that Russia correctly identified that this is where the offensive was going to take place and essentially mined 5 kilometers deep. But as you can see here, right, this is probably the largest salient of the offensive in this Rubtina region. And as you can see, it really it's not close to Crimea at this point. And we have to be realistic. If Ukraine were to suddenly manifest 100,000 additional troops, they would likely either use it to crack Russian forces where they're already deployed, either Rubtina, or if there's with troops, you can't get them so dense, right? Like if you were to try to push 100,000 troops down this one road, like imagine if 100,000 people tried to cross through the rural road in your town, no one would move. There'd be a traffic jam constantly. And military operations are even more traffic jam prone, right? Because someone's actively trying to stop you from doing it. So you have to sort of thread this needle. So you have to concentrate enough that it looks like an actual offensive in a location. You can't spread them through the whole front, but you also can't have them all packed into one place. So chances are, if Ukraine had an additional 100,000 troops, it would probably send some of them to Oruzane, probably send some of them to this Verbova region. It may actually put some near Volodar and Pavlivka, and some probably in and around this Klchivka region in Bakhmut. All this to say, think about it geographically. How would you even get 100,000 people? Ignore the war. How would you get 100,000 people into Crimea if you couldn't drive them down a road? You'd have to load them into a few hundred, maybe a few dozen transport ships and then take them all the way around to Crimea. That's not really feasible. They don't have access to anywhere in the Black Sea at all. So like, do you see how quickly this becomes a major issue for Ukraine logistically? It would be, why would you ever put so many of your troops in, just concentrate 3 divisions into 10 ships? And even if you landed them here, remember, 100,000 people, they need, a gallon of water per person per day, 100,000 gallons of water every day. They would need, 300,000 meals a day, right? That's not easy. It's almost impossible to do, given the Russian Black Sea Fleet does still exist, thanks Elon. But you see how much easier it would be to just deploy those troops here where there's fighting. So again, I think this is more in the realm of like fantasy than reality or rumor.
Ну, 100 тысяч со с лишним, 3 дивизии. Это первые 2 наступательные, еще 3 будет зачищена. Вот 150 тысяч.
I don't understand what he means is probably a reference to what are called, he's describing follow-on forces, but I don't think that's quite right. Usually what you do is you have about a quarter of your combat power in reserve. And the point of the reserve is that when you meet the enemy, at some point you feel the enemy start to break and crack a little bit. And you see these signs that they're not reinforcing their troops. They're not able to redeploy into combat positions. And at that moment where you start to hear the beams crack, that's when you commit your reserve, right? Because you know they're ready to be punched through. And having suddenly doubling your firepower in a location where things are already kind of creaky, you often punch through. And then when you punch through, because you have a reserve force, you're suddenly able to flood the battlefield and you don't run out of steam because you already have more steam, right? It's like trying to break into like a vault, right? Imagine if you had to just push the vault door open with one person. By the time you pushed it open alone, you're exhausted. You don't have time to actually raid the vault. But if you have 5, 6, 7 people that all push together at the last minute, the vault opens and everyone is a little fresher. They can all start to raid the vault. That's sort of how these sort of breakthrough offensives are supposed to work.
100-150 тысяч еще готовятся. Прикинь. Ну, у нас же запас-то тут есть, вроде. В Чебаркуле сидел, народ, блядь.
It seems there is some kind of training center located in Chibarkuli in Chelyabinsk region, which is far away from Ukraine. From what I found from Russian social media pages, there are mostly contract soldiers there. They deployed to Ukraine after a few weeks of training in Chibarkul. Also, it seems that the units formed there are mostly new because there is almost no information online about them. Sorry, today's video is short. It's simply because I don't have.
No, I think that's I think that's still a really useful video to see. Remember, guys, and when it comes to propaganda, especially around military operations, and sometimes if there are real leaks that you can't stop, the alternative is to increase the volume of the leaks of information. And so if you create rumors that not only are they preparing 3 divisions, 3 brigades, 3 battalions, 3 million troops, right? You can create rumors that they're going to attack in Bakhmut, in Zaporizhzhia, in Crimea, in Kherson. It makes it harder for the enemy to tease out where the truth is. This is why feeding false information to sources can sometimes be as productive as actually cutting off a source. This is pretty common in counterintelligence, and that's what I think this father is dealing with now. He's realizing that without the Russian mill bloggers, right, which Russia arrested because they were tired of people going against the Kremlin's official narrative, the gap is being filled in Russians' information by rumor, conjecture, speculation, and pure fantasy. And that means that the Russians are less knowledgeable about what's really happening and much, much, much more fearful, right? The truth is that, as we saw on the map, this is not going badly for Russia. If you're Russia, this is exceeding their expectations for blunting Ukraine's counteroffensive. But Russia can't even take the victory lap in their public perception, in their, in their media, because they've literally destroyed their credibility, right? Russia, when they were losing Kharkiv, they said the same things they're saying now. Our troops are brave. We're stopping the Ukrainians everywhere. They can't, the Russians are going back on the offensive. And people were like, well, no, it's not true, because you're launching successful offensives, further and further back in Kharkiv, like we know. So now when they say, oh, Russian troops are on the offensive, they're acquitting themselves well, they're blunting the Ukrainians, it's kind of true. It's more true than it was in Kharkiv, and yet no one in Russia believes them. Because the Kremlin is just full of liars. That's it. And that's what happens when you make yourself out as a liar, right? We all know somebody that lies all the time. And you just stop believing them. Even when they sit there and go, oh, I was lying about that before, but now I'm going to tell you the truth. It's like the Liver King effect. Liver King was like, I'm off steroids. I lied before, but now I mean it. I'm off steroids. And then we're like, everyone was like, hey, man, for someone who's not on steroids, you're still jacked. And then he's like, I lied that too. I actually am on steroids now. And you're just like, I don't listen to anything you say. Nothing you say is true. It's just, if your mouth is moving, you're lying. That's the Kremlin rule. All right. Anyway, that's all I had, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you to our sponsor, Bespoke Post, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.